but I would say this to you. And I'm going to be careful here because I know I don't want to get anti. I don't break down Orthodoxy, particularly in America, to what I would call, whether you're Russian or Serbian or Bulgarian or Carpatho-Russian. I really break it down more to what I call, forgive me because I'm going to offend some people, I break it down to what I call watered-down Orthodoxy or traditional Orthodoxy. And what I mean by that is we joined ourselves to the church outside of Russia because in the church outside of Russia, almost any place I can think of, you saw the kind of expectation of what Orthodoxy is that had always existed in traditional Orthodoxy. What I mean by that is you're not going to serve the liturgy unless you're doing the Vigil the night before, or you're doing Vespers, and you're doing Matins, and you're doing the hours, and there's pre-communion prayers, and you've gone to confession, and you're keeping the fast, and you have the services. What I call watered-down Orthodoxy is, you put pews in the church and you skip half the services, and women don't have to cover their head, and you can walk in. I mean, there's a Eucharistic revival going on in Orthodoxy, which I admire. I'm glad. I don't think it was meant to be that people commune once a year or once every 10 years. But a Eucharistic revival means everybody walks in every Sunday with no preparation. It's very much what's happened in Roman Catholicism. Many of my parishioners were ex-Catholics, and especially the older ones will tell you the preparation they had for the Eucharist wasn't that far away from the preparation Orthodox people had. Now almost every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the Catholic Church just walks in and takes communion whenever they want to. So I would say we have an affinity to the Greek Old Calendarists because I think the Greek Old Calendarists are directed toward preservation of really traditional Orthodoxy, but we felt very comfortable in the church outside of Russia being the same way. Some of the other, and I'm not knocking this, I know the Antiochians, of course, are having tremendous success in attracting converts, and I know there are Antiochian parishes that are really very stringent on their practices. There are Greek Archdiocese parishes that are, but then there are also parishes what I look at them and kind of go, if you want to be Orthodox, be Orthodox. This is kind of pretend Orthodoxy. You walk in and you've got icons, and you've got services that are bastardized so much that they're not even hardly recognizable. I mean, just to give you an example of that. Again, forgive me, I should be careful with saying this, but many years ago, I went to a place that was a significant center, let's say, of the OCA, and I went there, and they were having matins at 7:30 and breakfast at 8 o'clock. Well, you can't do matins in 25 minutes or half an hour in Orthodox Christianity. If you are, again, you bastardized the service so much it's almost not recognizable. Now, one can make the argument, whatever the argument can be made, but I guess I'm indicating to you, as an old ritualist, I'm not a fanatic at all, but I believe traditional Orthodoxy should be followed, not let's water it down as much as we can so we can draw people in here who can say, now I'm Orthodoxy. And I'm sure particularly, Telegraph had this article recently about, it called it a tsunami of young men in America who are coming into Orthodoxy. Yes, and that's good. I'm glad to see that in part. If basically it's super right-wing people who are looking for super right-wing political aspects of Orthodoxy, that's the wrong reasons. I make that point even to the priest, Father Stephen in southwestern Missouri, where I think he's probably drawing people of that nature, that you need to be careful and not politicize the church. There's room for liberal people and there's room for conservative people, and you shouldn't get into that. So, I've gone far above your question, but I guess I'm trying to say I'm not a fanatical believer, but I am an Orthodox Christian who believes Orthodox Christianity means a lot more than simply saying, well, we got icons and we walk in and take the Eucharist all the time, but we're not Catholics anymore.
Sure, no, that makes sense. And I mean, a lot of the Orthodox I know, I admire their piety. They're very serious about communion. They'll often not take every week. They make sure they fast before they take communion. It's definitely different than the church that I'm in. One thing I appreciate about the Orthodox, I will say, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding is sort of in distinction from the Catholics. It seems like if there were a bunch of Catholic monks who said, you know what, we're no longer going to pray for our bishops, then the bishops would say, then you're out of communion with us. But in the Orthodox, there's all these like monasteries on Athos who basically say our bishops have gone totally heretical. and they just drop their name from the diptychs and they don't pray for them. But instead of the bishops excommunicating those monasteries, they're like, well, it's probably for the best, because it's better for the church that we have people who are on a continuum of rigorism towards liberality. We need some people to hold the faith, and so it's better that that there's even monks out there who won't pray for us because they say we're heretical. Let's just not touch them. At least that's my understanding. Is that sort of correct?
Yeah, I don't. If that's the case, I really don't know that, because I know there was a period of time when one of those monasteries wasn't praying for the Patriarch of Constantinople some years ago, maybe 20 years ago, and I don't think he was that open-minded about that I understand. So I'm not sure that case exists.
Maybe
and again,
I'm totally off. Sorry.
and look, I want to make sure this is clear. I don't think there's anything wrong with people if they want to commune every week, but you have to make sure you prepare yourself properly for doing that. You just don't. I'll have people from other jurisdictions who will call me and say, Father Pimen Simon, I'm from the blah, 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 I won't say, another Orthodox church. Can I commune your church? Yes, but you have to come to the services the night before. Have you been keeping the fast days that exist, whatever they are? Have you confessed fairly recently? You need those, pre-communion prayers. If you're willing to do that, yes. And then generally they don't show up, because in their church, very often I can just walk in on Sunday morning, and I had some Russians who walked into my church a few years ago, little Russians who walked in and they got in line for communion, and they were obnoxious. A couple people told them not to, like, what are you doing? How can you possibly tell me you can't come to communion? I've never seen you before. You weren't in church last night. There's no way you can just walk up to, to the chalice. So, and just one other example, I had a man from another Orthodox jurisdiction come to me long ago, and it was before Great Lent began, and he said, in our church during, Great Lent, our Lenten fasting is we give up something for Lent. And I said, that's not Orthodox fasting. And sometimes my own parishioners will say, well, they, the blah, 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 they'll talk about the church. That's their fasting. No. All Orthodox have the same fasting rules. You abstain entirely from all animal products during any fast, and for strict fast, you abstain from any fish as well. So if somebody tells you that their fasting rule is you give up something for Lent or you give up meat for Lent, that's not Orthodox fasting. That's some watered-down Orthodox fasting rule. That's just not the. Well, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I don't go up to those people and say you're not Orthodox, any of that. Okay, that's your business, but that's not what traditional Orthodoxy is really about.
Sure. And then you have the Ethiopians who they're like, we're just going to eat bread and water for all of Lent.
They're very pious. I have some Eritreans. You know about this whole thing with Eritreans from the Ethiopians?
A little bit. I know there's a distinction.
Okay, so they had a political thing in their country. I don't know how many years, and I don't know the story. So I've had some Eritreans who were part, again, the Ethiopian church, who've come to my church. They live in an area. They are really pious people. I couldn't agree with you more. I have this one woman during Holy Week, she puts me to shame. She'll come and ask me if the church is open, and she basically goes in the church and stands there praying for like 6 or 7 hours during the weekdays of Holy Week, when I kind of walk in and go, well, I'm not standing here 6 hours. So yeah, they're very pious people.